Hello everybody and welcome back to Dollar Tree Dinners. My name is Rebecca and this is an episode of what I call Cooking for Community, where every week I shop, cook, and deliver meals to a local senior and her grandson. Week 5 of cooking for them, and as you can tell by the title of this video, I had a lot of hiccups this week, but I think it's important to share the successes as well as the fails, and the meals all still turned out really great. It was just some trial and error along the way. So as always, I try to include a soup, a sandwich, a dessert, a breakfast, 2 dinners, and a fruit. So this week for their soup, I made beef stew. For the sandwich, I did a couple of different baked sandwiches. I did a ham and Swiss with Dijon mustard, and then I also did a turkey and provolone with pesto and red peppers. For the dessert this week, I did some lemon bars, which I thought was appropriate for summer. Their breakfast this week was pancakes with bacon and scrambled eggs. And then their 2 dinners, I did a stuffed pepper, and I also did a chicken and gravy with stuffing. I did peas and macaroni and cheese with that. And then lastly, for their fruit this week, I did some fresh watermelon. Let me take you through the entire process of cooking from start to finish. I did cook this one over the course of 2 days. I split it up and did a couple of the meals the night before, and then I finished up the rest of them the next day. I didn't talk while filming this one, so I am going to have to voice over it. We're starting with the beef stew, and we're starting with about 2 pounds of Yukon Gold potatoes that I cut into bite-sized pieces. The next thing I did was I peeled and diced 1 large onion. I sliced up about 4 stalks of celery, minced 4 cloves of garlic, and I cut a handful of baby carrots in half because I didn't feel like buying whole carrots. So that's the veggie prep, and that brings us into mistake number 1, which was buying a package of stew meat rather than buying a chuck roast and just cubing it up myself, because as I tossed the stew meat in flour, salt, and pepper, I realized that the chunks were way too big and inconsistent, so I ended up having to cut down 90% of this into smaller pieces. But once I was taken care of, I preheated my Dutch oven over medium-high heat, and I added a good bit of oil in the bottom, and I began to cook my beef chunks in small batches. I did 2 batches, I really should have done 3. Once the beef was brown, I went in with the chopped celery, onions, carrots, and a splash of beef broth to help deglaze the bottom of the pan and get up all of those delicious bits from the bottom. Once everything's scraped off the bottom, you can add in the rest of the carton of beef broth, so 4 cups total, along with about 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, a teaspoon and a half of Worcestershire sauce, and about a tablespoon of reduced sodium soy sauce. Then I seasoned it with about a teaspoon each of rosemary and thyme. And at this point is when I realized that I had completely forgot to add in the garlic, so I threw that in real quick. I gave this a stir and then went in the chopped Yukon Gold potatoes and the browned beef stew meat. I let this come up to a boil, and then I covered and simmered it for 1 hour. At the end of the hour, I checked it for seasoning. I added some salt and pepper to it. I also checked to make sure that the potatoes were tender and that the beef was tender. But after that, this was ready to go. I divided it into some containers and sent it off. Now, while the beef stew was simmering for that 1 hour period is when I got started on the lemon bars. Now, this is a recipe that I found online. It called for 1 cup of flour, a half cup of powdered sugar, and 6 tablespoons of melted butter to make a shortbread style crust. Although after having tried the lemon bars, I think they would be a little bit better with a sugar cookie crust. Now, once I got this all combined, you're supposed to put it into a 9x9 parchment lined baking dish, and that is oh so important apparently. I didn't have any parchment paper. I thought if I sprayed it with nonstick cooking spray, it would be fine. As you will soon find out, it was not fine. But of course, I didn't know that at this point in the process. I packed it down using the back of a measuring cup, and then I baked this at 325 degrees for 25 minutes. While the crust was baking, I started preparing the filling. The last time I bought a bag of lemons, they were almost all rind, so this time I decided to buy these. These are called naturally seedless lemons. It was a 1 pound bag, and it was $3, and I did not expect a 1 pound bag to just be 4 lemons, but I cut them each in half. But now we get into another mistake, which was after I had cut all 4 of these lemons in half, I realized I was supposed to zest one. I attempted to zest a cut in half lemon, which did not work out very well. So I realized that I had an extra lemon in my fridge. I grabbed that out and I zested it real quick. Now, I definitely thought that this bag would have more than 4 lemons in it, so I was trying to juice them as much as I possibly could because I was worried that I wouldn't have enough juice. I needed 3/4 of a cup. Luckily, after I pressed all 4 lemons, I did them both ways in my little lemon press, I did have just under 3/4 of a cup. I did warn you that I had a lot of hiccups, and we're not even halfway through all of them. But now that that's out of the way, we're gonna mix 1.5 cups of sugar with 3/4 of a cup of flour and 4 eggs. Whisk that to combine, and then you can whisk in the lemon juice and the lemon zest. So now that the crust is par baked, we can pour the lemon filling over top of the crust and then return this to the oven to bake for another 30 minutes or so. And then I let it cool on the counter for about an hour, and then I stuck it in the fridge overnight. Now, had this tray been lined with parchment paper as it was supposed to, I could have just lifted the lemon bars up and then cut them into slices. I didn't realize how hard this crust was going to be to cut through. I was trying really hard with this paring knife to get all the way through the bottom. I even tried inverting this onto a cutting board to see if I could tap it loose. I've gone around all the edges. You can see I've gone over the same cut like 4 times and I cannot get it to cut through. So I upgraded to a more heavy-duty knife, and then I was able to cut through the entire crust, and kind of one at a time I was able to remove the bars from the baking dish. Now that that is over, all that was left was to dust the tops with powdered sugar, put them in containers, and these were also ready to go. And now we're moving on to the sandwich segment of the video, and for this I was doing some baked sandwiches, kind of like paninis, so I started by lining a sheet pan with some aluminum foil just for easy cleanup. My bread, I got 2 loaves of French bread from the bakery at Food Lion. I cut off the ends of each loaf and then I opened it up, and this is one of those shoulda, coulda, woulda moments. I thought about trenching the bread, I didn't. I should have trenched the bread for sure. Those ends though that I cut off the bread, I did cut those into cubes and I added them into my frozen bag of bread ends for making French toast casserole later on down the road. Back to the sandwiches though, definitely should have trenched the bread. I did brush them pretty liberally with some melted butter, and then on this first loaf I did deli ham, Swiss cheese, and Dijon mustard. On the second loaf I did turkey slices, provolone, some red pepper, and pesto. And I used a sub kit to make these, and the sub kit came with turkey and ham, and so that's how I came up with these 2 sandwich ideas. Then I put the sandwiches into a 350-degree oven. I put another baking sheet on top of that along with my Dutch oven, and I let them bake at 350 degrees for 20 to 25 minutes. I think I did close to 25. So now here's what they're looking like after they've been baked, and that's why I say I should have trenched the bread, because as you can see they kind of wanted to slide around a little bit. But it's totally fine. I'm just a perfectionist, plus trenching it would have made it a little less bready and more like a panini in my opinion. So I did let these cool slightly. I cut off the ends again because the ends got a little too crusty for me. And then I cut the sandwiches into thirds and I wrapped each sandwich segment in some aluminum foil. And I did mark HS for ham and Swiss and then TP for turkey provolone. So with the sandwiches out of the way, now we can move on to the breakfast, which I was multitasking throughout this process, but I thought maybe it would be helpful to show the individual recipes rather than the chronological order of things. Which for their breakfast this week, I did pancakes with bacon and scrambled eggs. So the first thing I'm doing is frying up a whole pack of bacon. This is like a 12-ounce package. Once my bacon was done, I got started on the pancakes. Now for this, I'm just using pancake mix. So there is no recipe here. This is just buttermilk mix that you add water to. I made 12 pancakes in total because I was going for 6 breakfasts with 2 pancakes in each one. Now, should I have made the scrambled eggs on a skillet? Yes, but I was trying not to also dirty my skillet when I already had my griddle, but as you can see, scrambled eggs do not work well on a griddle. They just kind of want to flow towards that little drip tray over there. I thought maybe if I created like a little trench, I could prevent the eggs from gravitating in that direction, but I ended up losing a lot of the egg mixture to the drip tray, so 100% just cook eggs in a skillet. It's not worth trying to do it on a griddle. The last thing for their breakfast was just to get some syrup cups to go for the pancakes, and then I assembled their breakfast with 2 pancakes each, 2 slices of bacon in each one, and then I divided the eggs. This was about 3 scrambled eggs per container, along with, of course, the syrup cup, and their breakfast is ready to go. These voiceovers are very efficient. We're less than 10 minutes in and we only have 2 dinners left, but I do miss cooking with you guys, so just so you know, the next video will not be a voiceover video. Next, we are doing our stuffed peppers. For these, I started by dicing up 2 onions. Next, I have 2 packages of mild Italian sausage, and I'm going to brown those up in a skillet along with the diced onions. Once that was browned, I'm going to move this into my rice cooker just for efficiency. To this, I'm going to add 1 cup of rinsed rice, 2 cups of chicken broth, 1 cup of pasta sauce. I'm using my favorite, which is Italian sausage and garlic, and then 1 can of diced tomatoes. Of course, you can use an Italian diced tomato if that's what you have. I gave this all a stir. I set it to white rice, and while it's cooking, I'm gonna get started on the peppers. I am making these stuffed peppers a little bit different than they traditionally are made because I'm making them for the intent that they will be reheated. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm cutting the peppers in half a different direction. Usually you just cut off the top and you stuff them from the top down. I'm cutting them in half lengthwise so that they will fit into the containers. Then you just have to use a spoon to remove the seeds. So now the peppers go into a baking dish with the cut side up. I drizzled them with some oil, salt, and pepper, brushed that to make sure that they were all coated, and then this went into a 350-degree oven for 20 minutes. After that, I then flipped the peppers over because they had some water kind of collecting in the peppers, but they've got this nice char on the bottom now. We can flip them over to remove that water content, put them back in the oven, and let them finish baking for another 10 minutes. And by this point, the filling was ready because it only takes about 30 minutes for the rice cooker to do its thing. This was a little on the loose side for me, so next time I make this, I'm going to do 1.5 cups of rice to get this a little bit thicker. But this tasted amazing, and of course, taste it, add salt and pepper, add Italian seasoning, whatever you want. Now to assemble our stuffed peppers, I'm doing this directly in the meal prep containers. I added 2 halves of each of the peppers and I stuffed it full of that Italian sausage mixture, and then I topped each one with a handful of shredded mozzarella cheese. I'm definitely going to put this one on their meal rotation because it was easy to prepare. It's kind of a classic dish. I know that they're going to love it. And we are on to the final dish then, and for this one I am starting with a rotisserie chicken because I'm not even going to pretend that I can make a chicken half as good as a rotisserie. I do buy the cold ones, they're a little bit cheaper, plus, you know, with what I'm doing with it, the cold one works perfectly fine, which all I'm doing is shredding it. I do remove the skin and I shredded as much of the meat off of it as I can, and of course save the carcass for making chicken stock if you want. Into a pot, I'm going to add my entire shredded rotisserie chicken along with 4 cups of water and 2 of these packets of Pioneer roasted chicken gravy. Chicken and gravy is one of my all-time comfort meals, and I know she's going to love it too because she loves chicken and rotisserie chickens are so tender. All we have to do is heat this through and let it thicken up. There is no better companion to chicken and gravy than a box of stuffing mix. And I should have bought 2 boxes of stuffing mix. I did just make this according to the package instructions, but again, I should have doubled up on that. I could have also made mashed potatoes with it, which she loves mashed potatoes. I don't know why I didn't include mashed potatoes. I think I just wasn't really thinking straight when I was at the store. So I added about 1/2 cup of the stuffing mix into each container, and I was only able to make 5 of them. I then divided the chicken and gravy on top of the stuffing, and as soon as I kind of saw what that looked like, I realized that this needed to go in a different type of container. So I transferred it into a divided container that I have, and now I need an extra side. So I had peas as one of the sides, but I also wasn't going to deliver these with an empty compartment. I did top the peas with some extra butter, and then I whipped up a quick batch of macaroni and cheese. This was just Kraft mac and cheese. I didn't film myself making it. I did add extra cheese to it, but I was working with what I had because I couldn't just make a last-minute run to the grocery store. I almost didn't share this video because so many things went wrong, plus I didn't talk while I was filming it. But there were a lot of good meals that I made this week and things that I will include in future rotations that I felt like it was important to share because so many of the things that I made this week would be easy for someone else to recreate, and now you know what I would have done differently. So as usual, I finished off each of the meal preps with a label kind of explaining what is in each meal prep. I include a use or freeze by date, which is 5 days from the day that I prepared it, as well as some general reheating instructions. And here are all the meals that I prepared. Despite all of the hurdles that I had, I was incredibly proud of this batch of meals, and she has really enjoyed them too. They both have really enjoyed them. So I'm proud to be able to share this with you, and I like showing you guys that sometimes things aren't always perfect. Sometimes you got to work with what you've got, and sometimes you have to change your plan kind of last minute, and that is okay. Otherwise, I really enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day, and I will see you again soon.